So it just kind of makes you wonder, who's he really working for? Because he is the at-large representative for South Dakota. So every truck driver who lives in that state, he represents you.
So, Jami, I feel like you're holding back a little bit. I'd like you to really tell us what you feel. Welcome back to Landline Now. The Labor Department is once again taking heat over another policy. Its new worker classification rule is being challenged now on a number of fronts, but the issue, quite frankly, is a complicated one. Here to uncomplicate it for us so we can understand what's going on better, Jami Jones and Mark Schremmer of Landline Magazine, the Final Rule Whisperers, Department of Labor Whisperers. I don't know. We'll come up with a cool nickname for you guys. How are we doing?
Keep working on it.
Yeah, we'll workshop it. We're also going to let you cook here, Jami, in just a little bit on a new bill that's ruffling some feathers. But first, these challenges to the new worker classification rule, which is set to go into effect on March 11th. This is complicated. As I said, I want to make sure we understand what this rule will do, particularly for owner-operators. Mark, you are tasked with making this as easy to understand as we possibly can make it.
Yeah, breaking down 339 pages of legalese into something that
start
can
with page
make
one.
Sense. I think the easiest way to kind of look at this is basically what this would do for the most part is go back to the rule that was before the Trump era rule, and it is the goal is to look at the totality of circumstances and really kind of break down whether or not you are an employee or an independent contractor. The concern over this is that this is, worker classification has become a huge hot button and controversial issue. AB 5 California, Julie Su, who was the labor commissioner in California at the time, is now the leader of the U.S. Department of Labor. So it doesn't take a whole lot of surprises to be concerned and why people are thinking, okay, we're going to go to this and we're going to have a strict ABC test. But you go through it, this does not appear to be the ABC test. It doesn't appear to be AB 5. But we won't really know. Like I said, there's 339 pages. This doesn't take effect until March 11th. But we have to see how it'll play out in the courts. I mean, that's really going to be how it comes down, to be able to a real good idea of how this will play out.
I mean, the reality is the lawsuits are drafted. It's just, it has to go into effect. I mean, there are actual attorney clerks with their tennis shoes on ready to run these lawsuits to the courthouse. So, I mean, we know.
On your marks, get set, go.
When you have 339 pages of the devil in the details, that's a lot of litigation potential. So we know that this is where this is heading, which inevitably will just further complicate the process as it gets sorted out, if you will. I mean, it's a mess.
And one big thing to think about, we talk about this from trucking. To make this even more complicated, this isn't just trucking. This is all industries. So to figure out exactly, like they might have the intention for this to work and maybe they think it works for freelance riders or this type of industry or, Uber drivers. But how does it work in trucking and interstate commerce and all of that? It's really difficult for this all to shake out. And for me to tell you this is exactly how it's going to go, I can't do that. But, I think for the most part, I don't think this would be a major change for drivers out there, but there's no promises. I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out.
I think it's really important to talk about the fact that there does need to be some distinction out there between independent contractors and employees, and especially speaking about trucking.
Oh, yeah.
Because what you see are people who are not independent contractors in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And they are not getting the benefits due them in the form of insurance and things like that. And it's just motor carriers shoving them over in this independent contractor label so that they can avoid their responsibilities as an employer. So, the reform has to happen. And it's easy for us, like you said, to look at it very narrowly in trucking. And trucking is a diverse industry
100%.
with a ton of laws that we have to navigate to get a definition out there. But the reform is needed. It's just, how do you go about it and how will it withstand litigation on the other side of it?
Yeah, and as you mentioned that. We also have these resolutions that have been introduced in Congress by Representative Kiley of California. No fan of Julie Sue. I think it's safe to say
I think that's fair.
And Senator Cassidy of Louisiana, I believe,
Correct.
as well. So we'll see how that plays out. But that kind of underscores your point, Jami, in that, we've got these, legal attorneys out there that are ready to file lawsuits. We've got these resolutions. I wonder how much of this is due to the fact that Julie Sue is leading this charge too, because she does bring out strong emotions, and she was tied to AB5 in California, so it's understandable. But I think that is probably churning up some of this angst as well when we look at the entire situation.
Well, you look at it. I mean, this is obviously politically fueled at this point in time. Right now, there are 54 co-sponsors in the House, 31 in the Senate. No surprise, they're all Republicans on this. So that's the concern. But yeah, it goes back to that California AB5. No secret, OIDA is opposed to it, and it's really just. It's taking a hatchet to the problem as opposed to a scalpel, which is what is needed. And we talk about these predatory lease purchase agreements. There are major issues out there. There are definitely drivers that are misclassified, but there are also real leased on independent owner operators that have had a good business model for decades, and we don't need that taken away from them and to hurt their livelihoods when things are working out well for them. So you just need to find that perfect balance, and it's not easy to do, and they haven't pulled it off quite yet.
Yeah, I think the wait and see approach is really where we are right now, just to see, as you pointed out, Mark, how this affects people out there. And I guess we will see, but we'll wait for those lawsuits. We'll see how this resolution plays out there in Congress as well. I want to shift gears here to a new bill in the U.S. House introduced by Representative Dusty Johnson of South Dakota. It's called the MOVE Act. It would lengthen the time of overweight exemptions in times of emergency from 4 months right now to 9 months. So quite a big jump there. Jami, you recently wrote an op-ed on this. Mark and I are going to hand you the ball. We're going to sit back and we're going to watch you run with it, because I know you've got
sip on some tea.
Yeah, she's going to spill the tea, or I don't know how that goes. Yeah. Maybe I didn't say that right. But anyway, Jami, go.
Well, I just, here we are. We're in an election year, and so when you put this activity against that lens, Representative Dusty Johnson is doing his trucking constituents no good right now, and we'll get to the one good thing he is doing. Anyway, so last year in January of 2023, he introduced the Ship It Act, which did basically the same thing, only it broadened who can declare an emergency for overweight trucks to hit the roads, okay? And now we've got another piece of legislation that's going out there that extends the amount of time. So that's 2 bills in one Congress that this guy is going after, trying to increase truck weights in South Dakota. And, every time this argument comes up, it's such a slippery slope, because you have very successful business models out there on the overweight side. They have invested in the equipment. They have the expertise. They get them good rates for doing this because it is a niche, segment of the industry. You open that up to the Wild West of any trailer that hasn't cubed out to fill up beyond 80,000 gross vehicle weight, and that is going to cut the rates. That's going to be an economic loss to these people who are specialized in an overweight. And then, the safety aspect of heavier trucks take longer to brake and stop. And then we have roads that are in ill repair that cannot stand it. So, that's a bad idea right there. And so not only did he have the bad idea, he doubled down on stupid and introduced a second bill. So now let's turn around and look at speed limiters with the Drive Act. Mm-hmm. Guess who is not a co-sponsor on that piece of legislation? Yeah, Dusty Johnson is not. So we're going to fill up your trucks with more weight. We're going to slow you down to 60, 65, whatever number they might come up with, on 80 mile per hour rural highways in South Dakota. Mm-hmm. It's just insane. So all of this is at the behest of ATA. I mean,
100%.
Chris Spear is quoted in his press releases about these different pieces of legislation. The one thing he has done for truckers is he did sign on to the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. He did that initially, but ATA is also backing that bill too. So it just kind of makes you wonder, who's he really working for? Because he is the at-large representative for South Dakota. So every truck driver who lives in that state, he represents you.
So, Jami, I feel like you're holding back a little bit. I'd like you to really tell us what you feel here.
When you look at lawmakers and how they serve your interest, you have to look at more than just your one hot button issue. And if you're going to look at whether or not you're going to vote to put him back in office, because he won election in 2018, he's been bumping around the halls of Congress. All of these overweight arguments that he's throwing out there for these bills has to do with the pandemic. Dude, you were in Congress when all hell broke loose during we shut down and all the panic buying. Where were these bills then? The thing was you couldn't get it drafted fast enough because everything kind of recovered and limped along, without it. So it's aggravating to see this kind of activity because it's the super PACs. It's something else is driving the issues because he's not listening to his constituents.
Well, and here's the thing, too, and we've seen this with and I always use air quotes here, the so-called driver shortage. These narratives that get out there and they do pick up steam. It's Dusty Johnson today. Is another lawmaker going to pick up on this? And this becomes the next kind of talking point, the next issue that sort of...
And I wonder where they're getting that driver shortage narrative from.
Yeah, well, that was my point. That's exactly my point, is you wonder how these things are going to kind of become earworms for these lawmakers and become a talking point over and over again. And we've seen this, as you mentioned now, with Dusty Johnson. This issue has come up, twice now, right. I guess, with him. I'm not saying that this is going to become the driver shortage issue. My point is that this is one of these things that does, from time to time, pick up steam. So we may see more people grasp onto this issue and think it's a good idea.
It's kind of the pandemic and emergency declarations are kind of the new vogue way to justify weird legislation. The green arguments out there, and it's hard. Well, we don't want a good environment. That's kind of hard to argue against. The safety argument's always out there, and you have to be like, well, that's really not how it's going to work. Well, now we have emergencies. We need to be able to react quickly to that. Well, of course we do. Yeah. But, 9 months, come on. That's 3 seasons out of the year, basically, on roads that are not up for the task.
Yeah, and it's tricky on the surface, too, because when you first read it, somebody might out there think, oh, this gives more flexibility to truck drivers.
Right.
That sounds great. More flexibility is good. But when you point out all the other issues that come as a result of that, and we see a lot of these things in trucking all the time.
And they're pushing for different ways to increase weight. They've been doing it for years. This is just another tactic, another attempt to do it, and we'll say emergency on it. That's what it comes down to.
And the other side of it, and, it's a tough one because it is a complicated issue because we've been looking at emergency declarations and how we didn't have hours of service for so long. We had more flexibility in that and it proved to be safer. Yeah. You have to look at the specific issue, the specific regulation, and what are the unintended consequences of that going to be? Because, like I said, you're in an emergency, you have to be responsive to that. People need help, and we have to be able to find ways to do that. It's just when you start looking at the length of time on this one, on the overweight.
9 months.
Yeah, you got to start wondering, really, how much toilet paper you're going to cube out on that before you even, so it's just, it's a BS argument on the surface when you really dig below it.
Well, Jami, we'll get you back in here one day, and maybe you'll really just unload and tell us what you really think. But we'll get you out of your shy stage here.
Well, I'll try.
Jami, Mark, a pleasure as always. Do yourself a favor. Go to landline.media. Check out Jami's op-ed, which is on there now. Mark, thank you as well. We'll see you again next time.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
We've got to take a break, but stick around. We've got more Landline Now on the other side.